Next 72 hours could decide whether the current tension in the Middle East stays under control or turns into something that affects the entire global economy. Because right now, the world is watching one of the most dangerous choke points on the planet, the Strait of Hormuz. It's just a narrow stretch of water between Iran and Oman, barely 21 miles wide at its tightest point, but every single day nearly 20% of the world's oil supply passes through this route. Now imagine that flow suddenly stopping. That's not a distant possibility anymore. It's a real risk, unfolding right now. Stay with me, because this situation is moving fast, and what happens next could impact far more than just one region. And if you're new here, this is World Hidden Reports, where we break down global conflicts, hidden strategies, and the stories most people don't fully understand. Make sure you subscribe, because updates like this don't wait, and you don't want to be the last to know. Over the past few weeks, Iran has increased its military activity in and around this region in a way that has made global observers extremely uneasy. Commercial oil tankers have reported being followed, approached, and in some cases temporarily stopped. These actions were not random. They were controlled, deliberate, and carefully timed, and the message behind them is becoming clearer with every passing day. Iran is signaling that it has the capability to influence one of the most important economic lifelines in the world. But to understand why this is happening, you have to look at the pressure that has been building behind the scenes. For years, Iran has been facing economic sanctions led by the United States and supported by Western allies. These sanctions have limited Iran's ability to sell oil, access global markets, and stabilize its economy. From Iran's perspective, this is not just economic pressure. It's a direct threat to its national stability. And over time, that pressure has created a situation where Iran feels increasingly cornered. When countries feel cornered, they start looking for leverage. And Iran's leverage is geography. The Strait of Hormuz sits right next to its coastline. It doesn't need to fully close it to create impact. Even small disruptions, even brief incidents, are enough to shake global markets and raise concerns across governments. That's what makes this situation so dangerous, because it doesn't require a full-scale war to trigger consequences. Just uncertainty is enough, and that uncertainty is already spreading. In response to these developments, the United States has increased its naval presence in the region. The U.S. Navy's Fifth Fleet, which is already stationed nearby, has expanded patrol operations and deployed additional assets. Other countries have followed. The United Kingdom, France, and several Gulf states have also positioned military forces in or near the strait. Officially, the goal is to ensure freedom of navigation and protect commercial shipping, but in reality, this creates a highly sensitive situation. Multiple military forces, heavily armed, operating in very close proximity, inside a narrow waterway. This is the kind of environment where even a small mistake can escalate quickly. A misinterpreted movement, a delayed communication, or a technical error, and suddenly, tension turns into confrontation. That's why military analysts are using words like volatile and unstable to describe what's happening right now. At the same time, the situation is not just military, it's also deeply political. Because now, the focus has shifted to the United Nations Security Council. The situation in the Strait of Hormuz is not just about presence, it's about capability, and Iran has spent years preparing for exactly this kind of scenario. Along its coastline, Iran has deployed advanced missile systems designed specifically to target large naval vessels. These anti-ship missiles can cover almost the entire strait, meaning any ship passing through is already within range. But it doesn't stop there. Iran also operates fast attack boats, small, highly maneuverable vessels built to swarm larger ships. Instead of relying on one powerful strike, they rely on numbers, speed, and chaos. And then there are submarines, operating quietly beneath the surface, difficult to detect, and capable of striking without warning. So any military force entering this region is not facing a single threat. It's facing multiple layers of risk, all at the same time, in one of the most confined waterways in the world. Now, yes, the United States and its allies have far more advanced military technology, aircraft carriers, guided missile destroyers, air superiority. On paper, they have the advantage. But war is not fought on paper, because the real challenge here is the environment, a narrow waterway surrounded by hostile coastline. with limited room to maneuver, that changes everything, and it raises a much more serious question. What happens if something actually goes wrong? Because in a situation like this, the first strike doesn't have to be intentional. It could be an accident, a misread signal, a radar error, a defensive response taken too early, and suddenly everything escalates. And once that first step is taken, there is no easy way to reverse it. But the danger doesn't stop at the Strait, because Iran's influence goes far beyond its borders. Across the Middle East, there are allied groups and proxy forces connected to Iran. These groups operate in Iraq, Syria, Lebanon, and Yemen. If conflict begins, these groups could become active almost immediately, which means the situation could expand rapidly. Instead of a single conflict zone, you suddenly have multiple fronts opening at once, and that's what military planners fear the most, because controlling one conflict is already difficult. Controlling several at the same time is something entirely different. And then there's another factor that could completely change the equation: Israel. Israel views Iran as one of its most serious threats. Over the years, it has carried out operations targeting Iranian positions and influence in the region. If tensions continue to rise, Israel could become directly involved. And if that happens, this is no longer just about protecting oil routes. This becomes a much larger confrontation with far wider consequences. Meanwhile, the global economy is already reacting. Oil prices have started to rise, not because supply has stopped yet, but because of fear, because markets don't wait for events to happen. They react to risk. And if that risk increases, prices follow. Analysts are already warning that if the Strait of Hormuz is significantly disrupted, oil prices could surge rapidly, which would lead to higher fuel costs, increased inflation, and economic pressure that would be felt across the world, from major economies to everyday households. And this is where everything connects: military tension, political decisions, economic impact, all tied together in one place. But here's the part that makes this even more complicated. Some experts believe Iran is not actually trying to start a full-scale war. Instead, it may be playing a much more calculated game, a strategy known as brinkmanship. Push the situation to the edge, create maximum uncertainty, increase the cost for the other side, and then use that pressure to force negotiations. It's a strategy that has been used before, but it's extremely risky because it only works if the other side chooses to step back. If they don't, then the situation can spiral out of control very quickly. Right now, both paths are still open. On one side, there are ongoing diplomatic efforts, quiet conversations, indirect negotiations, attempts to find a compromise, but at the same time, military movements are continuing, preparations are being made, positions are being strengthened, which means diplomacy and escalation are happening together, and that's what makes this moment so uncertain, because no one knows which direction will take over. The next 72 hours are critical. Decisions made now could shape everything that follows, and once those decisions are put into motion, they may not be easy to undo. So the real question is not just what is happening right now, but what happens next. Will this remain a controlled standoff, managed through careful diplomacy, or are we watching the early stages of something much bigger? Because if one thing is clear, this situation is far from over. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Do you think this will de-escalate, or are we heading toward a larger conflict? And if you want clear, fast, and real breakdowns of global conflicts like this, subscribe to World Hidden Reports, because the next update might not just be another headline. It could be the moment everything changes.